such a refreshing thing. Needs to be louder? How refreshing. You still can hear it? Now can you hear it? No? Oh my goodness. It's the other one? Oh dear. Well, anyway, I was saying that it's great to be here in person instead of sitting at our laptops and looking at each other's little squares with our little faces in it, or our names. So welcome to this very special service. We're gathering on this beautiful summer morning to celebrate the lives and to mourn the deaths of Nancy Kain and Don Cook. We have here a congregation who loved Nancy very much. Don called himself a New Age Quaker with a meeting house of one, but he was a friend of Namakwa as well, and we miss him too. But it has been a long time since Nancy died. She died in February, which is before we even knew about the pandemic. And we had a service planned for her at First Methodist because we thought probably hundreds of people would come since she was such a luminary in Loveland. But it had to be canceled, and so we set an alternative date for June. And then once again, it wasn't safe for us to gather in person. So I think there will be a public ceremony at some point, but we couldn't wait any longer. It's been long enough. And so we are mostly the Namakwa congregation today. We do have with us Nancy and Don's devoted daughter and son-in-law, Kim and Frank, and then also some very long-time family friends who are like family. And so I want to welcome all of you to this bittersweet occasion. And it really is going to be kind of light and shadow. The light part will be to celebrate. We're going to have some fun. They were party people, so we're going to try to invoke a party atmosphere, although it's a lot harder to do when we have to stay 10 feet from each other, is what we said in our variance, and 25 feet away from our favorite musicians. But still, it's great to be in the same space. We're going to have this recorded. Thank you to Angela Arvola for recording it on her iPad so we can later on post it to our website. And also, we're not going to have an offering during the service, but I put out some collection baskets. Namakwa, as you may know, visitors, we have a half-plate ministry where we donate half of our collection plate each quarter, and we don't want to short shrift neighbor to neighbor. So any of you who want to drop a check or cash into the collection baskets, it's at the same place where you signed in. Also, please, as I said in the little note, safety is going to be our #1 priority. So I would feel so terrible if someone got sick as a result of our being physically together. So please, even though I'm sure all of us want to hug each other or shake hands or do something where we can just be the animals that we are, we're going to have to use our intelligence and make sure that we're going to be careful and not get anybody sick. We're going to begin actually with a recorded song. The public service was to begin with Dylan, who is Nancy and Don's grandson, playing Claire de Lune on the piano. So I thought that would be a nice thing, is for us to just settle into this beautiful place and listen to some music by Debussy. in the tradition of Nancy's Unitarian Universalist faith, we'll light a chalice.
Good morning. It's nice to see all of your half faces out there.
Yeah.
We light this chalice for all who are here and all who are not. We light this chalice to keep hope alive, that one day we may all live in peace, that one day the dream of all the people sharing all the world will come true. For each of us and for us all, may this flame of possibility and hope burn warm and bright. And now a reading, When Great Trees Fall, by Maya Angelou. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. Lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly, our eyes briefly, see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nature, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us. They existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed.
I think I'm feeling that kind of soothing electric vibration being here with you all. There's a song that probably you all know. I don't know if you should sing along, but maybe with your masks on, you could hum. But this is Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, which is a spiritual. And the reason that we've included it is that Kim said that it was the last song that she and her brother Dave played for their mom before she died.
Swing
to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. So good to have Tim Bob. Oh. Well, I think you know.
And oral.
Thanks.
Right.
It is impossible to sum up a life, and even harder to try to sum up two extraordinary lives. Don and Nancy each had their own individual lives with their own interests and accomplishments. And then when they fell in love and got married and created a family, then they have their lives together as well. Kim has given me an abundance of treasures that she has found in going through her folks' papers, and we could be here all day. I have so many more stories that I could share with you, but we don't have all day. And what I thought might be fun is to have as our eulogy a song that was written by Sherry Thurston. Now, Sherry, are you here? But she's a longtime family friend and quite a talented songwriter. So she put some words about the saga of Don and Nancy to a tune that I think you will recognize. You also have the words in the piece of paper that has the order of service on it. And so let us now listen to the story of the lives of the two people who we come here to celebrate today.
The Macarena.
Kim, if you want to do it.
Once we were young and living in Algona, met anywhere and made a little home. Found that they liked to cuddle and caressing, soothing and blessing. 60 years through thick and thin. Hope they choose to do it all again. Time for children, time for dancing. Here's Donna Nancy, 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 Donna Nancy.
When I first came here and was called as your minister, it was 2011. Nancy had been the board president the year before, but to make a smoother transition, she agreed to serve yet another year. So she and I spent quite a bit of time together that first year. We would meet at least monthly in the coffee tree, and we would talk church business, but we would also start telling our personal stories and get to know one another much better. She was truly a NUUC star. Her lay leadership was just outstanding. Besides being board president, she was, I think, a membership chair. She served as chair of the Committee on Shared Ministry. She's a very passionate social activist, so she was involved in a lot of that. I remember one of the traditions that she started is on Mother's Day after the service, we would wander over to the Pocket Park in downtown Loveland, right there at Lincoln and 4th. And when I came, I would start bringing my guitar and we would sing folk songs. And then in loud, proud voices, we would proclaim the Mother's Day Proclamation written by the Unitarian Julia Ward Howe. Arise then, women. Arise, women who have a heart. She also served on the MLK Events Committee, which I was a part of. And that was what would have school kids every Martin Luther King Jr. Day on a Monday, put on a presentation. And there were just so many things that she did. And when I first came to the church, Todd Strickland, who had been the minister before me, was saying, actually, NUUC is at the heart, is the pulse of the social justice in this town, such as Nancy starting Peace in the Park, but we didn't take good credit for it. So I hope that in the 9 years that I've been here, we've been a little bit more obvious of who we are and what our values are and how committed we are to the issues of justice and equality. I think one of her most onerous roles, probably more like a full-time job, was when she was a project manager when we bought our first home. So this took so much work over months and months. At one point when we were getting weary, I met with Nancy and with the then board president, Carol Koch, and I gave us all these little turtles representing the perseverance that was required to make our dream of having our own home come true. And so I remember the building dedication when we were officially beginning our occupation of the building. I made a drawing of our chalice with our aspen leaves on a brick, and I had Nancy hold the brick and then turn it over to the Committee on Shared Ministries and the others who would then be working like a little beehive in our own first home. But I think the most significant aspect of my relationship with Nancy, and I think it's so telling of what kind of a congregation we are, is that one day in 2012, she asked if she could meet with me, not over church business, but over something personal. And what she told me then is that she had been contacted by Catholic Charities and that her twin sons were searching for her. This was something that she had not told anybody but her family. And what had happened is that shortly after she graduated from high school, she was 17, she called herself unmarried and pregnant. And so then she was sent away to an aunt in Texas from Iowa where she lived, and then later on sent to the Catholic Charities in Sioux City, Iowa for unwed mothers, where about 5 months after she turned 18, she gave birth to 2 baby boys, twins, and then a few weeks later, she surrendered her rights to them and gave them up to adoption to a couple who had very much wanted children but couldn't get pregnant. Nancy had been raised Catholic, and fornication is a mortal sin. And that was how she felt. Actually, for 55 years, she carried with her, she said, shame upon shame upon shame. But now she was a member not of a Catholic church, but of a Unitarian Universalist congregation. She said it's the kind of place where you are called to do the hard work of finding out what you believe. And also she said that she felt that there was a community that she had found that would accept and love her for who she is. So for months, we kept the secret. I kept the confidentiality, but very slowly, it was a little bit like a process of coming out. And one Sunday, without telling me that she was going to do it during Joys and Sorrows, she came up and she told the congregation about her sons. And then, in a service in November of that year, called Forgiving Ourselves and Forgiving Each Other, Nancy, who was a worship associate at that time, did a reflection. She shared her story with the congregation, and she said once again that she had found a feeling of acceptance no matter how imperfect she is. And she said, even though I try to hide that with others, I felt like I could bring my whole self to the Namaqua community, which is a gift worth its weight in gold. It is beyond words. And so she ended her reflection with a meditation by a Buddhist teacher, Daniel Wu. I am a human being who has made mistakes. I am not perfect. I forgive myself today. Today I will do my best, imperfectly. I am forgiving, and I will love myself today. I am a good, worthy human being. The sun shines each day no matter what happened yesterday. I forgive myself for all my yesterdays. I have an inner light that shines on me today. Amen, and may it be so, is what she said. So accompanying Nancy on that journey of forgiveness is one of the greatest honors that I have been given since being a minister here at Namaqua. And so over the years, I watched this woman of action. Doesn't that ring a bell if you know Nancy? What are we going to do? We've got to do something. So she was a fierce feminist and activist. Peace was her most passionate issue. She really longed for peace. And so over the course of the time when I knew her, a whole different side of her became illuminated. And she discovered what I would call a spiritual dimension. And the fact that before she died, she was able to forgive herself and understand that even though she was imperfect like all of us, that she was so worthy of love. What a wonderful blessing. So I want to thank you, the congregation, that showed her that truth.
What to say about two extraordinary people? This is not just about Nancy and Don and me. What I experienced as their friend, I believe, is illustrative of what many of us experienced. Because Don and Nancy were extraordinary friends. I was lucky enough to meet Nancy and then Don within months of moving to Loveland in 1983. I think Sue Ferguson had something to do with my meeting them. In Nancy, I found the most stalwart, loyal, helpful friend I think I've ever known, because she was there for the tough times, always. She was so smart and always wanting to learn more, always thinking she didn't know enough. She loved to have fun too, so there was the great combination. Soon after I met her, she called me to see if I could accompany her and another friend to see Maya Angelou at UNC. Oh yeah. Nancy was a dozen years my senior, and she brought along the 60-something old man, and off we went. My education from Nancy included meeting and getting to know all the liberals she knew. In Madison, where I'd come from, they were all my age. But in Loveland, you had to collect them from every age group in order to get a critical mass. Maya was amazing, of course, and on the drive back on a dark, icy, wintry night, in deep discussion with Lou and Nancy, I realized she was helping me find my tribe here. Don had a little different role. I mean, he was certainly part of the tribe, but he had no doubt that he knew more than just about anyone. Back in the 80s, I was invited to his little group, the Blue Buffaloes. Blue because we'd lost a lot of elections, and buffaloes because we weren't donkeys or elephants, or at least that was one of the explanations. Every week we talked about current issues at the Petite Cafe. And one time we were talking about the effectiveness of our presentation style, and I said, I could be demure. And Don said, no way. And he challenged me to show him demure. So I found a little princess-style dress, white hose and pumps, and I put my hair up neatly, and in I walked the following week. Don took one look, slapped a little reflective object down, and said, "The mirror is on the table." Don was ironic, sardonic, sarcastic, punny, witty, anything for a good laugh, with him or on him, if need be. I didn't know Don as a teacher or the founder of the alternative school or an investment broker or a dad. I just knew Don as a fun person to be around. Nancy helped me through divorce. Nancy and Don celebrated with me in a new marriage, beamed when we brought Nathan home, and were there when the first cancer struck my David. They helped drive Nathan to radiation or picked Nathan up from school or brought over dinner, and of course Nancy helped organize others to help. They were there when we celebrated his recovery. They attended every annual Blockstock music party and were there for the final one, Dave's memorial service. Let's see. I worked with Don and Nancy on her city council campaign, and when she ran for House District 51, Don was the unforgettable campaign manager. They were involved with the Grow Slow Loveland campaign, the open space sales tax campaigns, the fight to save Devil's Backbone, the Smoke-Free Colorado campaign, municipal taxing campaigns, you name it. We collected signatures for every progressive cause under the sun and lost most of the elections. In honor of Don and Nancy, I do have the Colorado Fair tax petition over here if you haven't signed. And while Don and Nancy commiserated over so many losses, we also reveled when some progressive somewhere actually won, like Kelly Olson in Fort Collins, or Obama, or when RBG was appointed to the Supreme Court. When Nancy was on city council, she worked to get our wonderful civic center in place. She was a feminist on a mostly male, chauvinist city council, and having revolutionary ideas like, people can ask questions, and we, as elected officials, can be knowledgeable and courteous to our public. People with different ideas are welcome as those who reflect the outspoken majority. Women have a place in government and will use their voice no matter how denigrated you try to make me feel. So many times we met at the rear of the steer after a council meeting where guidance counselor Nancy needed some counseling to get back to the neutral zone. Nancy founded Loveland's Peace in the Park and co-founded Martin Luther King Jr. Day and worked tirelessly on those plus Earth Day celebrations. We needed these to happen to show provincial Lovelanders that there's a world outside this little town, and Nancy's energy and urging were significant. Nancy and Don were big thinkers, and we were lucky to have them here. Loveland didn't always love Nancy and Don, but they weren't going away. And we marched and stood on street corners for peace, for oil and gas regulations, for limited growth, against guns, for women's issues. You can count on Nancy and Don to lead progressive causes and get down in the trenches. After my husband died, Nancy would call to check on me and find out what I needed. She knew that I struggled with my son. Schools weren't built for kids like Nathan, but she believed we could make it work. I asked her to come to an IEP meeting. Individualized education program meetings are nightmares for many special ed parents. They're supposed to be the annual meeting to make a plan for educating a child, but when you have a child who doesn't fit, it seems like making a battle plan. Nancy, as an advocate in educational matters her whole life, had never been to one, and being Nancy, she wanted to learn more. She came out with a new understanding, and every year after that, she either accompanied me or mentored me on how to be more effective and less combative. It was when I finally admitted that I was a Unitarian that Nancy and I cemented a long-term friendship and collaboration. She always knew I was a Unitarian, she told me. Don didn't need no in-church admission of his Unitarianism, but Nancy found a place where her numerous skills and education were appreciated and so necessary. She was my secretary when I was president. Yeah, she was NUUC's secretary, but I could not have done the job as effectively without Nancy. She anticipated and researched and reflected and wrote and prompted and made me think so much more deeply about my role and responsibility. In spring of 2019, she took minutes as usual at a particular meeting, and as we were closing up afterwards, she mentioned that she wasn't feeling so good and might drive herself to the hospital. When did this start, I asked. It's been going on the whole meeting, she said, but I had to finish taking the minutes. I took her to the hospital, let Sharon know what was happening, and Don and Sharon took over from there. We all knew Nancy had lots of medical issues. One time I let her know that a lot of flowers were blooming in my garden and she should stop by sometime. I saw someone walking around my yard, but I didn't recognize her. She had lost so much weight and was so small. But Don had greater medical issues, and many of us thought we were helping her help him. To our surprise, Nancy went first. Peace was her focus, peace was her mission. Now she can rest in peace. Don followed soon thereafter. Did he ever admit how much he needed her? I'm not sure he had it in him to say that, but we all knew it. Thanks for being here in person, or if you listen in later, thanks for remembering Don and Nancy, and I look forward to hearing your stories about them.
Thanks so much, Kathy. We want to invite you, at least a handful of you, to come on up one by one and use the microphone that Kathy's at, because we can clean it off afterwards. So if anyone would like to share stories about Nancy or Don or both, why don't you come on up and say your name and then tell us your story.
Gathering. My name is Shirley Kaufman, and I hope as I say my, hopefully, few words, that you'll hear a familiar thread. But the reason I'd like to speak about Nancy this morning is I knew her perhaps before you knew her, and I'd like to just tell you that story and how Nancy impacted me. I grew up in a little town on the eastern plains of Colorado that maybe had 1,200 people. Anybody can relate to that, or are you all big city folks? Well, in little towns on the eastern plains of Colorado, you grow to believe that you are the center of the universe, and the way you live is the way life should be lived. And so it was. And I went to what we called junior high and high school, and I knew that the Lyman Badger football team set the national record for winning football games, and we also were state champs in basketball and also in track and everything. And our boys were the best. And I understood that I was a cheerleader, and I was in show choir, and I did all the things that girls did. Oh, I didn't question that for a moment, because Lyman was the center of the universe. And then it was time to go to college, and the college football coach, who was also the counselor, said, you can go to any school you want to, because you'll be a teacher or a nurse. And I said, that's fine, but you can't go to CU Boulder, because I believe the girl students are not shaving their legs, and some are not wearing bras. And that was the end of the conversation. And so I went to Colorado State University. And then I returned to Lyman, Colorado. Much as I loved that little town, I wanted my children to be Lyman Badgers in their future, and then came Nancy Kain, except her name was Nancy Cook. Well, like I said, I grew up there, I returned, I was the counselor, and loving every minute of being in Lyman, and I still love to go back to visit. But in walked Nancy Cook, who was the Title IX enforcement person for the state of Colorado. Well, I was invited to the meeting because the superintendent was real honest about it and said it'd be nice to have a girl there, and I said that'd be fine. And so we met, and it was all, the top, they were all men, and Nancy was there, and I still have the bag that was given to me because the men didn't want it. And here is what it said, and she read the words as you can imagine Nancy would read it, but I want you to keep in mind, Nancy Cook, that was 40 years ago. So she was a very young woman, perhaps 40 years old or maybe 40 and a half. And I was starstruck because I was about 33. And she read these words. She said to the men in the room and me, well, the law says, and you can imagine her saying this, no person shall on the basis of sex be excluded from participation and be denied the benefits of or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity. She paused. She said that means athletics, okay? Receiving federal financial assistance. They treated her kindly, and she got ready to leave. She said, I'd like to give you this bag just to remember who I am, to remind you of who I am, because we fully expect for female sports to be implemented in this town, and if not, I'll be back. Now that may sound humorous, but think of it. Kim, she was probably younger than you are today. She was barely 40 years old, taking on the Goliath of the Eastern Plains, okay? Well, much to my surprise, I moved to Loveland, Colorado. You can imagine, I thought it was the hotbed of liberalism compared to London. And wouldn't you know it, Nancy was here, okay? And she at that time was a teacher. And then we needed to hire another counselor at Thompson Valley High School. Nancy applied and she got the position. Now the reason I'm sharing that story with you is it had a profound impact on Shirley Kaufman. And if it impacted me, I can only imagine the countless numbers of lives that have been touched by your mother and your friend. And I am thankful for the light that she brought into my life. And Kim, this bag will gladly be given to you as a reminder of the goodness of your mother.
What really struck me, one is, one day I was going into the rec center, and this is just a few years ago. Don't ask me why. I looked around and I saw that it was named after Chilson, and I saw this other plaque, the city council, who had got the funding together for the rec center, and there was that name, Nancy Kain. And I'm going, holy cow, she's everywhere. And then, not too long ago, at a summit meeting, Nancy just let it go. And we were just like, oh yeah, that's Nancy. It was amazing.
I'm Janet Gillette, and the best memory that I have of Nancy, I just love her. I just love her. But it's more of a kind of a dream deferred, because I felt really, really honored at one point last year when Nancy said to me, and we had kind of expressed the concept that we'd like to get to know each other a little better. But she said, let's go. Can you hear me now? Okay. She proposed that she and I do a pub crawl through Loveland, and each week go to a different bar and have their particular special beer or whatever. So we were going to do this. I mean, this was this big plan, but every time we were supposed to do it, one of us would be sick, or it would be snowing, or something stupid, would happen. So we never got to do it. So I love her, but I felt so honored. So at least we didn't do it, but she asked me to do it. And so I'm just really proud and humbled by that, because I just look at her like a goddess. She's just the most amazing woman. I didn't know Dawn that well, but I knew that he was crazy over her, and that was enough.
I'm Brenda Bell, and I'm so happy to see everybody. After I had made my presentation about being a lesbian and coming out, in that social time afterwards, Nancy comes up to me and says, "Do you think I could be a lesbian?" And I said, "No, Nancy, you're far too girly. No, it'll never work." And she snapped her fingers and said, "Oh, darn." And I said, "Well, maybe the next time around." And we had a good laugh and a big hug. I miss her dearly.
Hi, thank you. I actually don't have. Thank you. I actually don't have one story about Nancy. I probably have a million moments of Nanciness. Every time I wanted to do something that I thought was worthwhile, I would go there, and she would be there, and she had been there, and she'd been leading it, but she let me come in anyway, and she was a mentor and a friend, and she treated me with respect, which blew me away, because she was the most respectable, in the sense of deserving respect, person I ever met. And I miss her, and I just, I have peace symbols on my house and in my yard, and on my altar, in her memory. I love that little memory table over there. I don't know how she did it. She led without being domineering. She led with compassion. She didn't make a big deal about knowing more than you did, even when she knew more than you did, which is a gift to all of us, and a model for the way all of us should be. She was not. She was utterly passionate, but never partisan. I mean, she wouldn't believe in the divisiveness that we're trying to get through today. And I wish she were here to help us. But her memory will help us, I hope. So hold that memory and live that memory, because it's essential.
She surprised me. She was such a penultimate church lady that I was expecting her to be pretty straight-laced. The first time, she was the very first person who I ran into just shopping in town when I first moved to Loveland. And I called her by the wrong name, so I was mortified. And I wrote an email to her saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I called you the wrong name. I was so happy that I finally ran into somebody I knew in Loveland." And she wrote back, "Oh, that's fine." And then in parentheses, "Tee-hee. I can't hear in that ear anyway." And the next time she really surprised me, we were teaching religious education together to some kids who were low primary age kids. And it was around Easter time, so we were talking about the myth of the crucifixion and the rising from the dead, and one of the kids said, "I don't understand what crucifixion is." So Nancy went into these details about how it was that you die if you're hung on a cross. I mean, details. I was horrified, but the kids were like, And then a third time when she surprised me, was when Laurel was inviting the board over to our house for a meeting, and by coincidence, it happened to be on Nancy's birthday. So Laurel said, well, what kind of refreshments do you want to have? It's your birthday. And Nancy said, I'm getting into tequila shots.
Hi, I'm Elaine Axon. And I first got to know Nancy, which this has been a lot about Nancy, but I'm going to bring Dawn into it too at the end. Really close? So, I first met Nancy because she was the high school counselor of my oldest son. And man, she was good at her job. She was marvelous. And he made some very good decisions with her guidance. And honestly, what wasn't she good at? And I wore my pea skirt today because I was fortunate enough to work Peace in the Park with her several years. And then my most recent, I was their housekeeper for several years. So I got to see the interaction of Don and Nancy together, and I honestly don't think she could have done much of what she did without him there as her support. The love was just palpable, even all those years later. And of course, Don's humor has been mentioned. So when I first started working for them, I asked, would you guys mind paying me under the table? So the first time I came over and worked a couple hours cleaning house for them, Don said, Elaine, come here. And I was like, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? You know, I didn't break anything or nothing. He said, sit down, right next to him on the table. And he hands me my money right there under their kitchen table. So, you know, I just know they filled this world with love and humor, and that's the way we can get by often. So they're both so dearly missed. And what beautiful people to have in this world.
Can you hear me?
A little closer.
Closer?
Eat it. It's a popsicle.
I'd rather have chocolate. Could I have chocolate? Today we're here celebrating an exceptional woman, that's for sure. That's entirely appropriate. And it's kind of ironic because as we were leaving the house, they were taking John Lewis's ashes across that infamous bridge in Alabama. And I think there's some similarities between those two because old John used to say, make good trouble. And that was something that Nancy was never afraid to do.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no country. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. And no religion too. Imagine all the people living a life that brings you. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
Blackwater Woods ends it this way. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones as if your life depends on it, and when the time comes, to let it go, to let it go. After my husband's memorial celebration, Nancy said if the occasion arose, she would like me to repeat these same words by Dr. Seuss. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. We extinguish this flame, but not the memories that Nancy and Don leave behind. May we carry in our hearts their legacy of laughter and love. May we know that we are better because they existed. Unto all things there is a season, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to sow and a time to reap, a time for love and a time for peace. We all have our mistakes and weaknesses, and they die with us. But victories of character and spirit, such as we've heard described today, remain. This is the central message of every major religion, that what is truly good cannot be destroyed. The good and the blessings that Nancy and Don bestowed in their lives don't die, but they live on through us, and we will remember them. Kim found this in a book in Nancy's handwriting. When I die, the wind erases my footprints, but the moon holds my spirit. Remember me. So Nancy and Don, we say farewell, but we will remember you, we promise. You know, I visited Nancy a lot those last days, and one time I visited her at the Medical Center of the Rockies, and She had had a really, really rough time. But she was feeling a little bit better. Her brother JC was there. Kim, I think you were there. But she was so excited to show me the latest song that she had fallen in love with. It was written by the country singer Travis Tritt, and it's called "It's a Great Day to Be Alive." And when Nancy, after being away for months because of her health, when she came walking back into our sanctuary one Sunday, Tim and Bob had learned that song to sing to her. And so let's end today's celebration with a reminder that it's a great day to be alive.
Just
So remember to stay safe as you leave. I sure wish we could have a coffee hour or a party, but we'll do that in our hearts, and that'll be another deferred dream, like what Janet was talking about with the pub crawl. So there are on this table some little buttons, peace buttons, which you're welcome to take as like a party favor. And also remember that we do have the collection baskets that are at the welcome table. And so please, if you brought any money, donate as you would so that we can split our plate with neighbor to neighbor. And I think the final words, and this is very much in the spirit of our friends, Nancy and Don, would be what Jim brought up. So go make some good trouble. Go make some good trouble. All right. Much love to all of you.